but that'll work better. Yes, sir.
All right, man. Okay, so good evening. It is, let's see, Tuesday, May 28th, 2024. My name is Brian Baylor. I am the village administrator for Hannah City. This is a community and economic development council meeting with the focus of evaluating grants and making recommendation to our board of directors. I am going to ask that we go around the room and introduce ourselves so everybody knows who's here. Let's start with Zach CEDC.
I'm Zach CEDC.
And you represent who, Zach?
The village of Hannah City.
Thank you, sir.
Megan Welker, just resident.
One of the at-large members, thank you.
Jeannie Thomas, Farmington Area Public Library District.
Jeannie.
And Zach Odewald, I represent the Logan Raleigh Fire Protection District.
So David is actually the board member, but he has sent a representative in his stead, which is great.
Zach Chariton, Farmington Schools.
And we've got Zach Sheridan, and I think at this point we do not have any guests that I do need to recognize, but I would entertain a motion to allow Danny Pearson to vote remotely. So we do have a quorum in the room, so we can vote to have Danny vote remotely if we would like, and we have a motion by Chatterton.
Second.
Second by CEDC.
Trace.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Taking us out to dinner.
Trace, would you introduce yourself if you would, please, so people online know who you are?
Yeah, Trace Evans, representative of Hannah City Park District on the
Thank you, sir.
CEDC.
All right, so we've got minutes from the previous meeting. If you all would take a look at those minutes, and if you have any suggestions or changes, please let me know. And if not, I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes as submitted or revised, depending.
No, I thought they looked good.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome.
Good work.
Learn from the best.
But will it get a motion? That's the question.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Welker, second by Thomas. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. So the next, I would encourage you to look at the spreadsheet, color-coded spreadsheet that I sent. At this point, we have already approved 24C1, 24C2, and 24C3. Those three projects we recommended and were approved by the board of directors, so those dollars no longer exist. We have a total of $75,000 that we can distribute for commercial projects. The last meeting, 24C4, the coffee can was tabled because it was not yet reopened. That project was a pergola, if you remember, on top of the deck to cover the deck and create that little shading up there to make it look be more appropriate for people to sit up there and not being in the sun. It was tabled, I think, primarily based upon the discussion was the fact that it was not open, and there was concern about whether or not it would return the financial assets that we wanted to see returned. Is that fair? Okay. Since then, we've received 24C5. Now, if you remember right, at the last meeting, 24C5, we did approve that based upon receiving the second quote. So we said if the second quote came in and it was reasonable, we would go ahead and approve that project, and we'd be willing to do that in a remote meeting, but we would have to vote on that. So I would say that to say that the last two projects, if we want to distribute the funds differently than we've distributed so far, I think we're probably going to have to repeal those, or say that the motion's going to need to say that we're going back on the two things that we voted on, one that was on the table, one that was based upon the second quote, and redistribute the funds differently. I'm not suggesting that's the right thing to do. I'm just saying that those two things have already been approved, so they would need to be moved back on if we decided we didn't want to do them. Gil Evans has both a business and a apartment building back. It's kind of back. I don't. Is it 3rd Street, 2nd Street? What is it? Back 2nd Street, all the way back on 2nd Street. He wants to blacktop both parking lots in order to make those look better. And then we also have Sharon Lively, who submitted something for Country Relics. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Love lady.
Love lady.
I'm sorry. Love
Sharon
Lady, and redoing the siding on Country Relics there on Main Street. So if you add up what we've approved, I put down there kind of in the bottom that 41,162.15, I believe, is what we've approved already of the $75,000, which means we have 33,837.85 remaining to approve. There's nothing that says that we have to give people the full 75% on any project. That's just the cap. So we can divide those dollars however we want. Just because people applied doesn't mean they're eligible to be approved. At the end of the day, if you say I don't like projects A and B and decide I don't want to give them any money, fair enough. I would remind us that our charter as the taxing bodies for the village are what's in the best interest of the village first, and then second, if somebody's received money previously, all things being equal, how do we spread the wealth? So at this point, what we've done historically is we've gone right to them and done them one by one and voted on them. At this point, I don't think that makes sense given the fact that we have limited dollars. So I'll open up to discussion on the 4 projects as to which ones you think might merit opportunity for grants.
So you're saying last month on the 23rd, we reviewed C5, 6, and 7?
No, we reviewed 4 and 5.
We reviewed 5 and 5.
4 we tabled, 5 we said that we would approve if the second quote came in consistent in the neighborhood of the first quote.
And did that occur?
It did. I'd have to look at the exact dollars. But again, it would still require a vote.
Right.
We'd still have to vote to approve.
And did we give her money before?
We did. Last
Okay,
year,
I'm sorry,
Gills did get dollars.
I wanted to go back and
So that, I
thought
think,
we did.
so from that standpoint, both Gills and the coffee can, not in terms of grants, but both of those people have received dollars from economic development. The coffee can did not receive it through the grant program, but rather through a TIF program.
Right.
Yeah. So the second quote on Gills came in. Let's see if I can get a total. So the original quote for Gills, and they can use whatever they want if you remember, doesn't have to be the cheapest quote, it's just they're going to have to pay the difference if they don't like it.
Yeah.
So 18,940 and 34,600. And the quote that they received from the other was 23 to 27 for the 15 windows, and the new siding was 55 to 7,000.
So much more.
It was more, that's right. So like I said before, we do have 2 things we've already voted on and approved. Tabled.
We didn't really vote on an approved coffee can. We voted to table it.
Right.
Correct. So again, I don't know if you're right. We could always leave it on the table and not do anything with it.
Or vote.
And then Gills, we did vote and say that assuming, but at that point, again, I'm not trying to debate or argue one way or the other. At that point, we didn't have any other quotes, so we said if they had money came in and the quote was reasonable, and we had the second quote, that we would move forward on that. So,
I'm not making a motion right now, but I feel compelled to act upon that application first because they submitted it. We asked for a second bid. They provided that.
Yep.
It's in the ballpark.
Yep.
And the other two came after that one.
Understand?
I feel, and I'd share with you in the email. I'd forgotten that fact that I was thinking we either divvy it up between all three of them, what remaining funds, and they can either accept that or withdraw their application and come back next year.
Correct. So the point you made to me in email was if we decided we wanted to take the 33,837.85 and divide it by 3 and spread it across, and again, you're leaving coffee can out because we tabled it. But your point was if we wanted to divide that amount across Gil Evans and the Love Lady, that would be $11,279 a piece, which would be short of what the cap, which would be 15, 15, and 14, but still a significant amount. But I think what you're saying is maybe we should deal with Gil's first and make a decision as to whether or not we want to approve them with the full cap, or do we want to not approve them and then revisit all 3? Yes.
I think it's important though to point out the fact that part of what we require is that they have 2 quotes. So technically they didn't submit before last voting. You know what I mean? It was an incomplete application. So from my point of view, they're on the exact same level as the other 2 because it's part of our requirement. After last year's voting, we decided as a committee that was a requirement to even look.
Yeah. So I think maybe moving forward, we should act in a denial fashion based on an incomplete application, so there's closure to that application and a complete resubmit.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I guess what's hard is we didn't know at that time we were going to get 2 other commercial applications.
And according to the minutes, we did not approve based on a second. We decided we could vote electronically.
That's true.
Those are 2 very different wordings as well. Because we did not say as long as you submit it, you got it. We said we would vote once we got it.
Correct.
So we did not accept that proposal, and they did get money last year. So I'm not saying they shouldn't receive
what
it.
he's saying, maybe what we should do is take a vote on Gil's based upon the fact that they did submit a second quote and decide whether or not we want to allocate funds that way, or but we do have additional information, right?
Yeah, and I'm not sure I'm prepared to vote yet,
Right.
because I feel like we have
2 other good
3.5 to think about.
Yeah.
Well, I guess my opinion has not changed regarding the coffee can because their doors aren't open.
Right.
I think that's a place we get started.
So there's been no change.
Yep.
Well,
I
I think the intent on tabling was to see if they were going
That's it.
and they haven't reopened.
Yeah. So
And
maybe that's
the
an
date they gave
application
us
we can
was
look at.
prior to tonight. Now they've moved their date, which is the end of the month, and I do know that they're getting closer to that point. But your point is valid, which is as we sit today, we have little evidence that it's going to be different than it has been. So I guess that's the point: is do we feel like the coffee can should continue to be tabled? Because and again, at the end of the day, let me remind us. It doesn't have to be a grant. If we decide later that we have funds in both economic development programs, if we decide later we want to give the coffee can dollars because we believe it's going to advance it and move forward, we can do that.
Just as you did this.
It would just be outside of the grant program.
yeah.
I would love to move forward on at least voting on that one. I feel like that would get us somewhere, and then we can focus on the.
Well, let me ask the question: do we need to move forward if we've already tabled it, or do we just let it lie?
Well, I believe
I
we
think we need
tabled it till this month.
We need to provide closure. We
Yeah.
tabled until there was evidence of a business plan, or at least I think the intent of tabling was to provide them an opportunity to open for business,
Right.
and they haven't.
Okay. But in our minutes say that we until next CEDC meeting.
Fair enough.
Yes, we need to vote on it.
All right, so then I would, Zach, you've been quiet. I know it's your first meeting. Anything you want to add, or?
No, I would be in agreement there. I feel like to get any kind of economic return, the business obviously has to be open.
Yeah.
And with 3 other applications, 2 of which that I feel are probably a little more deserving of the funds based on your requirements, being to
Best interest of the village.
best interest of the village, and have they received funds before? That makes it pretty black and white as to who steps to the front and then who gets moved to the back.
All right, so
Not
at this point,
saying
I would entertain a motion to say that we're not going to provide funds to the coffee can through this year's grant program, assuming we exhaust the funds, which we're going to tonight, right? But doesn't make them ineligible for other economic development funds. So we're going to take it off the table and vote to not provide them funds.
Are you all right if I phrase the motion in a positive so we know how we're voting?
I am more than happy
All
to
right.
do this.
I move that we act on the 24C4 application in either a
I
yay
second.
or nay fashion for the
I'll second
application
the
that's
motion.
presented.
Fair enough. Do I have a second? Oh, we had a motion by Cheddar. Do I have a second?
Welker seconded.
Who did? I'm sorry.
Welker.
Okay. Welker seconded. We're going to do a round table on this side.
Okay, so we're voting.
I know, I don't know.
So
what
a yes
to do.
means that you approve the application, and no means you reject the application.
Okay, no.
So Trace,
Nay.
Welker,
Nay.
Thomas.
Nay.
I guess should I say Odewald or should I say? I guess you're voting Odewald. Yeah.
Nay.
Cheddar.
Nay.
Okay. So the
What about
24C4.
Peterson?
Huh?
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Danny.
It's all right. He doesn't care about me.
I do. I love you, Danny.
Yeah. I'm going to abstain.
Okay, you're right. You were staying last time because you have a vested interest in that. So we are going to deny 24C4.
With the comment that we encourage them to come back once the business is up and rolling.
I will do that.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
next is 24C5, which is Gills. And again, we don't have to necessarily do these in order. We have 24C6, which is Evans. And we have 24C7, which is the antique place, but it's a Love Lady. So I would entertain a motion to move any of those forward at whatever financial rate that you think appropriate.
Can I ask, are the numeric applications 5, 6, and 7 based on when completed applications were received?
No, they're based upon original applications received.
Okay.
If you put a gun to my head and said, when did we get Gills? I believe.
Well, I would say complete application because that's kind of.
I think 6 and 7 came before 5. If you put a gun to my, I don't know that for sure, but I think that's true.
Okay. Does that factor into things for anybody?
Again, I would remind us that benefit to the town, did they receive money previously, are our 2 primary criteria.
I'm struggling.
I think that we actually need to look at these risks. Risks.
You're not an insurance
Uh,
agent.
Sorry, my day job's
Day job.
talking.
Yeah.
I think that we need to look at these applications on a case-by-case basis.
So the question might be, which one do you feel is that provides the greatest benefit to the village manager?
Well, and not just that, but I think if you just look at the description, right? Without having too much of an understanding, just at face value, the paper that we were directed to look at first in the meeting lists windows and siding, which is definitely a facelift, right, for any kind of establishment.
I think all of them are really facelifts. None of them are functional improvements. That's the question that you asked me earlier.
So then my follow-up question then is, where does parking lots fall?
Well, I also believe
I agree, it's a facelift.
location is a factor. Like Gills, right, wrong, or indifferent, by location is the most visible establishment in our town.
This is getting confusing since Gil Evans is another applicant.
I know. I keep kind of having to struggle with that.
Yeah.
I think
So,
there's a lot of things to take into
Sid-
consideration between the three.
Yeah.
Gills is kind of the face of Hannah City, or close to it.
Yep.
But they did receive money last year.
Yep.
And their building looks beautiful because of what they did last year. So even though this is an improvement, they're not an eyesore. Gil Evans has been a longstanding member of our community and has provided places such as the Park District with nearly zero profit projects so that he can help us out, which makes me, being attached to the Park District previously, want to vote for someone like him who's a community guy to get funds. And Sharon Lovelady has communicated to me in the past when we were looking for donations that sometimes she feels a little left out of the community and that people don't visit. So I would really like to put my arms around her a little
Plus,
bit
it's
too.
visible. It's on Main Street. It's not 116, but it's visible.
Right.
Yeah.
But they are only open 3 days a week now, I think. And, so I mean, there's pros and cons to each one of them.
Does anybody have an appetite of splitting the money between the three applications?
I'm
Remaining
afraid
funds?
that'll make a project not happen.
Then I'd reallocate those funds to the other two that do move forward.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Offer all three of them, split it in three. And if one says, no, I wanted the max, then okay. Hey, the other two get the max or whatever the max would be.
2 ways instead of 3 ways, you saying, Danny?
Yeah.
So again,
And if they withdraw, we would welcome them to reapply next year.
Oh, absolutely.
so if we did divide by 3, it's 11,279 versus 15,000 for Gills, 15,000 for Gil Evans, and 14,310 for Sharon Lovelady.
I mean, I think that's the only way to do it where it
Yeah.
doesn't look like we're leaving someone out.
Yeah, I think in the interest of fairness, I'm favoring the 11,279 to all three applicants. And I mean, if that's going to dictate whether or not they follow up on
That's
these
their
repairs,
choice, right?
exactly.
So,
And I mean that's entirely their choice. I understand the question about receiving the second quote from Gills following the receipt of the other two applications. I don't think it's a matter of qualifying because I think that since we did receive all three applications at the same time, we need to at least acknowledge the fact that we would be voting on them as they qualified equally at the same time.
it's the clock starts for the 90 days to completion from the time that
submitting of an approval of the permit.
approval of the permit.
Correct. So after you guys say and the board votes, I meet and have a kickoff meeting with everybody. And I say from the time you turn in your permit and it's approved, you've got 160 days or whatever, 6 months to complete the project. Is that your point?
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out a way to create a motion that defines a dollar amount equally between the three applications without them having to reapply if someone withdraws their application.
Mm.
And if two of them,
Of course, the other thing we don't know is somebody else could apply. We could get another commercial application.
right, but once we take action, that's pretty defined
Agreed.
for them.
I want to hear from Zach though, if it's okay. Zach Odewall, because you were thinking that you were pretty strong on the 2. How do you feel about the division of over 3?
I just feel, based on what you stated, that it's the best interest of the business,
Yep.
and have they allocated funds before. That makes that pretty simple. Now, if you want to divvy them up, that's fine, but you got to pick. You're going to divvy them up from here forward, or it's going to be based on your criteria. Whichever is fine. I have no difference one way or the other.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would say is someone could argue that providing funds to Gills, which is probably our third greatest sales tax generator,
Yeah.
is putting money to the place where we're going to get the greatest benefit. Now, it might be a stretch to say that this specific project is going to increase those dollars, right?
Agreed.
And I think that's a fair debate, because it may not. You may get what you're going to get regardless.
Right. Yeah, I would argue that am I going to go to Gills because they have new siding versus siding that's 10 years old? I don't really care what the place looks like. I like what we inside. But again, that is an argument one way or the other.
I understand. I hear you.
Man, you're making me change my mind. That was a very good point. I think we need to be diligent in the way that we do this, because moving forward, we need to make sure that we're standing by those things. I mean, just as you said, really, we needed to deny that application last meeting and have them resubmit. We need to set some precedent.
Yeah. I would subscribe a little bit more. I hear what you're saying. I don't necessarily disagree, but I would push back a little bit that none of these are dire.
Not one. Nor does it
Construction
really
projects.
bring any tax value
Right.
to the village, other than
They make it look nicer.
they make it look nicer. But they bring no benefit to the establishment or the village other than aesthetics.
But they're all three.
Maybe the parking lot. You could potentially argue the
I mean,
parking
I think there's an argument that a place you're going to rent that has a nice parking lot
Yeah,
could
for sure.
drive
Absolutely. You could
property
potentially,
values
yeah,
up.
absolutely.
I think that's fair.
Well, you know, I think I'm going to harken back to the last couple meetings. There's a term that's been thrown around, beautification. And I mean, at any given point, you know, the intention of all of these improvements across the board is to improve the look of the property.
Absolutely.
The only thing that I would say, playing devil's advocate for lack of a better term here, against your counterpoint, would be that the criteria to apply. It doesn't necessarily mean that just because somebody's received funds in the past doesn't mean that they can't receive them again if they're going to continue to improve their building.
Absolutely.
And the last thing that we want to do, while we want to open up the opportunity to all businesses to apply for the grant and receive funds, we also don't want to turn away somebody who's applied in the past simply because they've received funds in the past, or remove the value of a potential opportunity to apply from a grant from somebody who's received the grant in the past, right? That might be doing something else.
Sure.
Yes and no. I mean, that was part of our thing from the very beginning, was we were going to consider that when approving. It wasn't in the application process. It was in the approval
point
process.
is all things being equal, right?
Right.
So,
And the problem with all three of these projects is they're all kind of on an equal playing field.
I think that's probably true.
Because one project isn't better than the other because they're all potentially, I mean, two of them are identical projects.
Yeah.
And one is a parking lot, which is still, you could maybe argue that provides a little more benefit to the facility than it does, just makes it look nicer. But with Cindy Smith's and Sharon Loveladies, they're pretty much on an equal playing field. So then you have to go to the next criteria, which is, did they get money or not? I'm not saying, personally, I would put the money off the record in Gills versus Sharon Loveladies, because I think you're going to get more return out of Gills than you are Sharon Loveladies. But based on your criteria, that doesn't work. And that's all I'm basing it off of, you know.
I think that's well said.
So, with that, then you would think theoretically you'd fully fund the Lovelady, you'd fully fund Gil Evans' parking lot project,
And for what it's worth, at least $4,500 for
And-
Gills.
and
And
then
then allocate the 4,500.
4,500 can go to Gil's, or they can decline and apply next year. I'm sure they're probably, I mean, we'd encourage them to apply again next year, right?
And they could,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So,
Let me ask you this question, is there,
I wasn't, like I said, off the record, I would give it to Gills because I think that is a better investment. But
I understand.
I've been at one meeting and that was a criteria you gave me, so that's what I'm basing off of.
No, I think that's,
I think it was very good input. It was a lot to consider.
yeah, changed my mind 3 times.
I know, I'm usually not.
I guess, let me ask you
position.
this question, is there any project where you say, I want to give them all the money?
Yeah, all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to give all 3 of them all the money.
Absolutely.
We just don't have the resources, so then it's.
Is there an ability?
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Do any of these projects qualify for the second
That's what I was just going to ask you.
area?
Yeah, I would say they probably qualify. They'd have to, just like we did with the Park District, or excuse me, the Sportsman's Club, they would have to reapply. Again, I don't want to put my thumb on the scale, but I mean, Sportsman's Club got approved and they got money last year.
What did the Sportsman's Club get done? What type of project was it?
Which one?
Well, whichever one that got the additional.
This year?
It was $3,500 towards the baseball and softball facility.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, like,
That didn't meet the criteria for the grants, so the board agreed. This board agreed to make the recommendation to put the money outside of that, and the board agreed to do that.
Yeah. Which I don't
if you
think
get a
so.
chance, go up and check it out.
I would say my son plays t-ball up there, and then we would have had a 10U team. But I mean, I personally, I wouldn't have put money anywhere different because the
Yeah.
youth of our town is.
Oh no, I think that's the way most feel.
Yeah, I just wondered if it was like a, I don't know if they had the parking lot resealed or something that you could fit Gil Evans in
Well, they did last year.
the year before that.
Yeah, but that was part of
But that was part of
actual
this.
grant.
Funny story, I had a friend in town Sunday. We went to Hog Trough for breakfast. He was taking me back home, dropped me off, and said, I got to swing by our storage unit to get some stuff. I said, go up this way and everything. He goes, what the heck is that? And he drove over there to look at the cell phone. He goes, that's awesome that you have it. And, he's a buddy of mine from North Peoria, so it was kind of funny that he's like, man, that's like a field of dreams out there or something.
Sure.
He'd never seen it
It's
before.
going
He
to
thought it
be
was
even nicer.
Yeah, I was up there, as you can tell, for 5 hours today.
But it was neat to hear somebody
Outside.
outside the community.
And so many people outside of the community come there, especially when you're bringing teams outside of our community to come there, talk about the face of the village. That's where what you see as a parent of younger kids is all the parks, right? Where you
And they're
can
going to
play
see
baseball.
Gil's
That's right.
property, and they're going to see
And what
the
the
relics.
relics.
Relics when they go there.
And I don't disagree, but that is a hard criteria to put in there to say, well, because we see you first, you get that. That becomes. I don't disagree with that, but that
And
gets a little.
Do any of these projects make you feel like the tax dollars to the fire department's going to increase more than the others?
Not to the fire department, no. If they were building a, multi-family home or something, yeah, absolutely. I feel very inclined to vote against that.
Well, that's what you should do, right? You're
Right,
here to
absolutely.
represent that interest.
Right, absolutely. And that's what I'm trying to do is represent the fire department, not Zach Odie.
Yeah.
And I would want to vote as David would, and I think this is how he would at least view what's on the table.
Anybody feeling like a motion at this point, or
Not it.
not? Well, put our fingers.
So, no. I mean, what about Dan?
Yeah,
Hey, Danny, what do you think, buddy? What do we got?
Everybody made very good points, but I'm still stuck on the giving all 3. And if you don't want it, somehow word it to where we can give more to the other 2. That's just the way I feel.
Well, I guess to me, the easiest way to do that, if that's what we want to do, is divide the 11,279 across all 3 projects. I'll communicate to them. If one of them turns it down, then that means we've got additional resources, and we'd have to come back and decide how to distribute those resources.
So,
But I would not feel good after taking action going back and applying funds to a previously acted upon application. I think that gets to be a sticky wicket. You know, what would keep us from going back with excess funds to a project for the car wash that was approved, you know, the time, you know, like.
Well, that would be the other option, is if there's additional, we could say to the 3, take it or leave it, and we still have funds, and if somebody else applies, we could do something different.
Yeah.
I mean, again, what we're talking about is the difference between, let's call it 11,000 and 15,000. So $3,000, $3,000, and $2,000.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, some of you are business owners in this room. If you were going to still get 11, 12 grand for your project, I'm assuming you're going to probably take it. Maybe I'm wrong.
So, and I think the easiest way to kind of, I'm not making the motion, but if I was to make a motion, I would
ask you out, would you go?
Yeah, I would consider a motion to accept 24C5, 24C6, 24C7, an equitable amount of $11,279, and then everybody could vote yes or no on that platform on whether they're comfortable with equitable distribution. If that fails, then you could go back to accepting each application
Right.
on its individual merit.
Yep. Get the feels of them and then decide where you're
But that kind of, how do people feel about a hypothetical motion of that nature? I know, Danny, it sounds like you'd be in favor of that,
I'd be
right?
in favor of that, yeah.
Zach, you haven't really said much. What you're...
Yeah, I'm sort of teetering on two camps. I'm all for equally allocating the funds. I think that's the small town thing to do. But at the same time, if I had to pick only 2, I would pick Bill Evans and Sharon Lovelady. We've already given Bill's money, and it's not like if they don't get this money that they're going to pack up and leave the town. Like, that's just simply.
So hypothetically, the other option would be to fully fund those 2 projects and offer Gills 4,500 or whatever the balance is.
Yeah, accept 7 and 6 in their full allotment, and remaining goes to C5.
That sounds like a good motion to me, but
All right.
That's actually the way that I'm leaning right now. Is I'm thinking more along the lines of sticking to the projects that have not previously been given funds to.
it's not like you're not giving Gills any.
But I guess we already have a motion, and
Yep.
we're
No, nobody made any motions.
No, you're not.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
going to make a motion.
I wasn't quite done with my statement. We already have a motion that we're discussing, putting on the table. That right there would give us what we need.
It seems like we have 2.
It sounds like what I'm trying to say is we're already discussing something without the motion. We already have an idea for it. Why don't we just put it on the table?
Yeah.
And then
One
make
of those 2 motions
discussion.
is fine, whichever one.
All right. I make a motion that we accept incomplete application 24C5, 24C6, 24C7 in the equal amounts of $11,279.
I have a second. Second from Trace. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Yeah. Roll call that.
Is it a
Should
yea
I?
or a nay?
Oh, let's roll call it. Let's roll call it. Let's go CEDC.
Yes.
Evans.
Yay.
Welker.
Nay.
Thomas.
Nay.
Odewald.
Nay.
Chatterton.
And don't forget.
Pearson.
Yes.
So let's see, we got yay,
Yes.
yay, nay, nay, nay. So we are 3-3. It's up to you, Zach. Welcome to the big leagues.
Yeah.
I have a feeling you've been in this position before.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with nay. No.
All right. So that one's turned
You
down.
won me over. I don't know why. I'm the one that wanted to go equal parts to begin with. All right.
All right. So how about we entertain a motion to fully fund at the cap 24C6, 24C7, with the remaining dollars going to 24C5.
So moved.
Who's that?
Second.
CEDC? So moved. Second.
Second.
Second from Thomas. Let's roll call it. Evans.
Hold on, we
You want discussion?
No, it's all good. It's all good. Terminology and phrasing got me on that one. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, you're right. We should have discussion. Any discussions?
I just want to make sure we're fully funding C6 and C7 with the remainder going to
C6
C5.
would get 15. C7 would get 14,310. And I can do the math, but it's around $4,500. So if you take 33,837, 33,837.85 and subtract 15,000 and 14,310, the remaining dollars are 45,27.85 for bills.
Who seconded that motion?
I did.
So we had a motion by CEDC, right? A second by Thomas. Any further discussion? All right, roll call. Evans,
Yay.
Welker,
Yay.
Thomas,
Yes.
Odewald,
Yay.
Chatterton.
Yes, with comment that we are great appreciation for 24C5, and we look forward to future applications.
CEDC.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Pearson.
Oh, I'm sorry, Pearson. God, I'm sorry, Danny. Forgive me.
It's all right. It's all right. I'm used to it. Yeah.
What's your vote? What's your vote? What's your vote?
Yay.
Yay.
All right. Motion carries. So at this point, we have, assuming approval from the board, we've exhausted all but about $600 of the residential funds available to us and all of the commercial funds available to us. Doesn't mean that we can't come back if somebody submits another project and wants to do something that we won't be back to vote and discuss, but
Can I make a comment?
of course.
Just looking into the future too. So, we gave the Sportsman's Club money, even though they had previously received money. So do we want this to be more first come, first served basis? Or should we wait a little longer before voting in the future?
I think it's an excellent question. I
think
debated
those are important
that
things.
myself, right? How we should wait another month until we gathered.
Do you not have a deadline for
That's what I was
these?
just gonna say. Do we have a
We
deadline for
do.
applications?
We tell people that the applications are due before May 1st when the funding becomes available. But if nobody applies, or if we've not exhausted all the money, we're still open to receive applications
Right.
throughout the fiscal year.
Is there a reason you?
But the
voted
question
for-
is, but I think there's a valuable point in that if we would have delayed our original vote by 30 days or whatever, we would have been able to look at them all at this
Right.
point.
I see value.
But the other thing is, maybe we would have not gotten any more. Last year we didn't get any more.
Right.
We voted on it and we were done.
I think we should phrase it first review date and not have a deadline.
I like that.
So first review means that this is the pool that we're making decisions on as it sits.
Yeah,
And it's not a definitive deadline, because a deadline to me means, well, nothing after the deadline without penalty.
Yeah, the language is hard because I think people get confused, and we can do a better job of that. I'll admit that. I tell people the funding isn't available to the new fiscal year, which begins May 1st. Well, in everybody's mind, then that becomes,
Yeah, like I can't do anything till May 1st anyway.
and the deadline's not then.
Right.
And then some people turn them in February, and some people don't and wait, right?
So we could say first review mid-April with no allocations prior to May.
Yeah.
We could do that.
And it's new. As the word gets out, I think this will get
I think
easier.
we get there's the thing.
But
Yeah,
We're gonna be getting normed.
because Farmington's what 5 years ahead of this too,
Mhm.
and you're full. Like,
Yeah,
the
well, they
first
do
come,
first
first
come,
served.
first served, right?
Correct. Yes.
So everybody.
For residential. For residential.
Oh, okay.
And commercial to a certain extent, but there's discussion just like this.
Yeah.
And what was I gonna say? I think I lost it. Do they take into consideration like previous applicants as well?
Oh yeah.
Like they're still allowed to apply each year if they want?
Yeah, but you can't get as much in subsequent on the residential.
Okay. So there's like tiers. Like if you got money last year, you get a max of.
Yeah, so some people have,
I kind of like that idea
Yeah,
too
but,
to work into our
they're
language.
fourth year into an application and $1,000 is $1,000. Thank you. And
Yeah, no, I actually love that idea. That might be language to consider. Like
Sure.
we would love to have your project next year as well. But maybe for commercial it's 15 is the cap the first year. Second becomes 12, third 9.
I mean, I definitely think there's value in probably delaying our conversation on making formal decisions because and improving our language up front so
Right.
people know when things are.
the tough one is we're very fortunate that all of our commercial thus far has been cosmetic.
Yeah.
there's no.
Like,
Right.
in Farmington, we've had a couple like their business was in dire need of the funding,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
or else there was going to be a significant issue for them,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
and that makes it a whole lot easier to kind of bump that up,
Yeah.
and take action. So I think that we have to keep that in mind. That's when certain projects become a higher priority.
Yeah, for sure. If they're all siding across the board, that puts them on a level playing field over here, and then you got to decide on this. End.
Yeah, like-
Yeah.
So.
Well, at the end of the day, I mean, however we decide to distribute funds, we're doing good. You
We're
know?
doing very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this was a good discussion to have because some things were brought to light that we hadn't really previously considered.
Yeah.
And you just want to make sure you're doing your due diligence and serving the community. And
Agreed.
I mean, we are a work in progress.
right, we're new.
We're new. I mean,
And that people don't feel like they're being turned away because it was a one and done.
Right.
Well, the other thing I do really like is the more we can reward existing businesses that have been here for a while, who have been a pillar of our community.
Yeah.
That's huge. I mean, a lot of economic development programs in my mind get moved into the category of how do we bring in new business, but there's really a value in taking care of those who are your anchors already. So
Yes.
Well, and
100%.
Well, I think that, goes to say that the recommendation to Gills could be that they could apply for that second level, and
Sure.
let the village decide as well, and that can come to us as well.
no, I think that's fair.
I think that should probably be something that could be discussed because, it wouldn't be fair to offer that up to the Sportsman's Club after receiving funds last year
Yeah.
and this year,
No, I think that's
and then not offer that to Gills as well as an opportunity. So
At least an opportunity.
exactly, and let the board vote on it, or let us vote on it and then the board vote on it. However that worked,
Yeah, I mean, there were some notable differences for sure. I mean, the reason why that was put over there is because it couldn't be included in the grant program. So it was not in the wording, it wasn't in the legalities.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's
Hey,
Dollar
we're still
General,
doing good-
Casey's, and Gills are driving our retail.
Still
at
doing
least.
good stuff here.
Huh?
We're still doing good stuff
it's all
here.
for the betterment of the community.
Yeah.
Agreed, absolutely. Yeah. I tell people all the time is the people that put all this work in place to get these programs in place did the hard work. We get the fun job of giving away money.
Have you heard any updates from Kansas City Tap?
The last time it's probably been 30 days since she's been here. She picked up her both her liquor and gaming licenses, and she told me she hoped to be open in 30 days. That kind of made a face, in that process. And that's probably been 30 days ago. I think she's in good shape. Have you been in it? It's gorgeous inside.
No,
It's
no.
unbelievable how nice
Next
inside
time you
it
should
is.
text me when
Oh,
if
it's
you get an opportunity.
Yeah, it's really nice inside. They
Your
changed it
duplexes are
around.
running.
My guess is they're probably within 30 to 60 days of opening up, but it's going to be a different place. I mean, they changed the bar around. They want to serve breakfast. They want to have food all day. There's all kinds of things that totally be different. So, and they put a ton of money into that place. It does really look nice.
I can tell you it was closed, but whoever lives in the apartment got to hear Blues Traveler at least once by accident because I chose the wrong location on my
Well,
touch
there's actually
screen.
going to be two.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was wondering how you.
There's going to be two apartments, a small one and a larger one. I don't know the status of those, but I do know that they've got them all cleaned out. But it's coming. That's going to be fun. And a lot of people don't know this, but we also have a guy who is applied for and received liquor and gaming licenses based upon bringing another gas station to town.
Oh, it was approved?
It was approved.
I knew it was on the table. I didn't
But
know
it
it was
is
approved.
contingent upon bringing gas. So if he doesn't bring gas, he doesn't get the other.
Is that
So
going to
he
be the
can't-
shopping plaza?
He wants to put it in the mall. Yeah, down there where he wants to buy the mall and put it in.
Go buy the whole mall.
Not the apartments, but everything else.
Gotcha.
Yep. He owns the BP station over by Lake Camelot.
Oh, lots of good bourbon in that place.
Yeah.
Seriously, he always
Yeah.
has like the
Really
hard stuff to
nice,
get
really nice
at a gas
place.
station.
Um,
So weird.
Yeah, if people are asking, I mean, if you want a liquor license or a gaming license, you're going to have to bring something unique to town or something in addition to town. You're not going to get it just to be a gaming location.
So I'm not on Facebook, but what is the new little thing that is going in at the plaza, or you call it?
Yeah, on the end,
I call it
it's not a retail place. They make, if I understand correctly, well, there's two things. They make the one on the end with the flower pots.
Yeah, that just,
They make, I think they make spices and dips, but they sell mostly wholesale to restaurants.
oh.
It's not a retail location, but they needed a kitchen outside of where they were doing it, and they put it in there. And then the other place, the other bigger space,
I heard the dojo left. Is that not
I heard the
correct?
dojo is leaving. I don't think it's left. I think those people are relocating. But the other empty space is, you know what a Faraday kit is? Does that make sense to anybody? Yeah. Apparently, the other place has been run into a place that assembles and sells Faraday kits.
Which is what?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a doomsday type.
Yeah, it's like
Oh, like a prepper.
but like a bug out bag type
It's
situation.
supposed to protect electronics from.
Yeah, so no
Electromagnetic.
signal
Oh,
coming in.
oh,
So
like
okay.
an EMG.
Oh, okay.
But then the question becomes is if it gets sold to the new person, then how
Right.
many of those? Yeah, at this point, I guess if the dojo leaves, then I suppose they can move. If that's empty, then they could put the convenience store in there and the gas on that end. I don't know. The board's opinion was, we're not in the job of figuring out whether or not you can fit the gas station and the pumps and everything else in. That's your job, right? If you can do it, having competition for gas in town would be a good thing.
Right. And I have another question. I'm being nosy
No,
tonight.
you're good.
What's going on with the old antiques? Do you remember
Oh
that
yeah,
old antique?
something else.
Someplace else is coming. It's the old antique
Myers
store.
Annex.
No, across
No,
the
it was
street.
across the street, and they
Way
had
before your time. That was an
coming soon.
antique store.
Yeah, right across from Gills?
Yes.
Yeah, I've not heard anything on that other than I know that the individual that bought it had a death in the family and might be looking to unload it, but is there something moving in there?
No, I'm asking you.
Yeah, at this point, I don't think anything new is happening in that space.
Which is unfortunate because that's right there.
Yeah,
on
and it
the
looks
main
like they're getting all
drive,
like
too.
ready inside, and
I always thought it'd be a nice place for Gills to expand or the warehouse or whatever to move over there.
Whatever.
Anyway.
That'd be a tough
And they're
renovation.
just not going into too much detail. I am in conversations with a lumberyard / hardware store that might be interested in coming to town and selling a property to expanding an existing business in town. So there's things going on, but and then always the Hermans have the frontage property over here that would be nice once they get their plans together. So there's things happening, but nothing imminent.
Good conversation to be having, though.
Yeah, it is. It's
We'd love to find some property for a fire department. For a
man,
firehouse.
I'd love for you to get the old Myers Mall and be able to just pull right up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
I
nice.
think they'll have that building before we'll have theirs.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah. All right. Anything else for the board to discuss? Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
See you.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, man.